This is the Enrichment Sports Source with your host, John Pennington.
Good Sunday morning. Rainy, nasty, ugly Sunday morning, but it's a good Sunday morning here in Set. We hope it's a good Sunday morning where you're sitting and watching this show. We appreciate you watching this show. We got a packed show. I'm going to say show 15 more times here. We're going to look back at the 2013 Tennessee football season. We'll look ahead to the 2014 season. We will talk a little bit about recruiting, actually a lot about recruiting. We'll talk about last night's SEC championship game and what does it tell us about Tennessee. And we'll also, at the end of the show, give you our view, how much faith do we have after year one that Butch Jones is the right guy for Tennessee. We'll discuss all of that in a show brought to you by our good friends at Enrichment Federal Credit Union. It is the holiday season, folks, and you know you're going to overdo it. So if you don't already have an Enrichment Visa, Visa Gold, or MasterCard, be sure to make the switch as soon as possible. You can get 3.49% fixed APR for 12 months on all balance transfers from your higher rate cards. There are no fees to worry about, and you can get 12 full months at 3.49% to pay off those balances. So when you get through with your Christmas shopping and you sit there and you go, wow, I put too much on my card, call Enrichment. Make a switch, save yourself money by cutting that interest rate all the way down to 3.49%. Just another way. Enrichment is the best way to bank in East Tennessee. All right, and I got the best crew of folks here in East Tennessee. I want to welcome in Jimmy Himes from WNML AM and FM. I want to welcome in Bob Hodge, freelance contributor to the Knoxville News Sentinel. I want to welcome in Mike Strange, regular contributor to the Knoxville News Sentinel, and the most irregular guy. It's the Christmas season. You'll see, look, we've spent a good $20-25 on this, on the decor, but we have our own Christmas ham in Chuck Cavaleris. So, all right. Guys, I want to get started with some of the Butch Jones talk. Most fans, I think, understand that he inherited another bad situation. You know, Fulmer's mess begat Kiffin's mess, begat Dooley's mess, begat Jones's mess. When you look at it, there are still a few folks who say Derek Dooley, this is Derek Dooley number 2, Derek Dooley same thing, 5-7, blah, can't beat the big guys. I want to ask you, what has Jones done this year to give you hope or to cause doubts? And I'm not talking about specific plays and games or anything. We'll get to his best and worst moves in a second. Mm-hmm. Just overall, what's giving you hope or what's giving you doubt in terms of what Jones can do?
I'll tell you what I think, and a lot of fans don't consider this, but the way he has reached out to the media, the way he has reached out to the former players, and the way he's reached out to fans in some ways, I think that is a big difference between him and Derek Dooley right off the bat. I mean, yeah, exactly. It's a guy who has shown that he knows the PR angle of this, and until things get better, I think you feel better with a guy that you go, you know what, I like him. Yeah. And so I think that's a big difference right there.
And we were sitting here a year ago today, or a year ago almost to the day, talking about could he recruit in the SEC? Could his staff recruit in the SEC? And in his press conference, he said, yeah, look at what you've got to sell here. To me, the recruiting aspect, and it's a part of that is being a tireless worker, and the way he gets it, a Twitter account with 100,000 followers, all of that you got to look and say, yeah, this guy gets it, and it's showing in the recruiting rankings.
Well, you've taken all the good stuff and you got recruiting, so I'll go with the gray uniforms.
Was that a cause for doubt or a cause for hope? What do you think, guys? Jimmy, you got one?
Played hard when they didn't always have to play hard at times, and I say that have to. I was really curious what they do at Kentucky. Mm-hmm. Bowl games out the window. So I thought they played hard for him. I think they responded to him. You had some players that were fifth-year seniors or four-year seniors that said, I wish I had another year to play for this guy. He won the players over. Dooley didn't do that. I don't think the players cared for him. He won them over, and while it didn't show up in the one-loss record the way Tennessee fans would want, I think they played hard for him. They respect him. They like him. And I think that was a big deal for him to get them to buy into his system and to want to play for him.
And that's a foundation that you lay right there that's going to keep going forward. Regardless of what happens, you've got your players buying in.
I think you should be hopeful because he the whole thing, you got to get a signature win. Well, he beat South Carolina. Mm-hmm. Now, everyone's forgotten it. It's like it didn't even happen. But he went toe-to-toe with a better team and cost them a shot at the SEC title and the BCS title. Mm-hmm. So you have to give some credit there. If the big moan has been, well, we never can beat a good team, okay, did. So you can't just say, yeah, but then we lost to Alabama. You have to accept the Carolina thing and say, that is reason to believe. You wrote some. Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to underscore what Chuck said about recruiting. What's the biggest problem right now? Lack of talent. What's the biggest thing he's done? He's addressed that with recruiting.
You mentioned something in a column a week or two ago that I thought needed to be brought up that I think also causes reason for hope. And eventually you're going to have some kid that gets in trouble. You haven't to date. It's been running a pretty clean ship. You haven't had the big scandals. You were really on the cusp there with your grade issues and the APR. You go out and you smoke through that. I just think there are several reasons I think to have hope. Doubts. Any reason for doubt?
The Vanderbilt game gave me doubts. I kind of thought that Tennessee went into a shell offensively. That was the one game. Now, it was one of the few games in a month or a month and a half that they'd been competitive, but I thought that they went into a shell. I thought that they played more not to lose than to try to win. And that was a game that you're dead even with somebody in talent for a change, unlike you had the stretch leading up to that. So that worried me a little bit, that I kind of thought that Tennessee's coaches sort of pulled their players back a little bit and said, let's play not to lose instead of playing to win.
I thought they only did that after Dobbs threw his 2 picks, but still.
And to me earlier, I think if you look back, one of the big regrets will be going into the Florida week, coming back from Oregon, and saying we're going to open up the quarterback competition, and whoever has the best week is going to be the starter. And that turned out being Nathan Peterman, and that was an absolute disaster.
Well, I think that kind of jumps us ahead. Best coaching move, worst coaching move. Does that one? I mean, hey, this was Bob. You know this. This was a first guess. I'm not second guessing. I didn't like the idea when we talked before that game. Don't start a new guy in the swamp. I don't care what Florida's got. Don't do it. That's not the place to break somebody in. To me, by far, that's the worst coaching move of the year.
Yeah.
And what makes that worrisome was it a move that was made because you had people outside of the football team, a lot of pressure saying, let's do something other than Worley. Did you hear that and you react to it? Because I just have a hard time believing that was the first week that Nathan Peterman had been better than Worley in practice.
And it was really magnified, guys, by how bad Florida turned out to be, whether it was because of injuries or whatever else. I mean, that was a very beatable team, and Tennessee wasn't able to take care of it.
They got a lot more beatable, though. I mean, that.
Yeah,
got a lot worse.
Yes, that wasn't a 4-8 team when they beat Tennessee, but it still wasn't going to be a 10-2 team either.
Right.
Yeah.
I was just saying, my concern, getting back to the concern, my concern would be that they peaked in October. I know Alabama, Missouri, and Auburn were really good, but Tennessee wasn't really competitive with any of them. I mean, to me, they played their best football in October.
Agree with that? I think schedule.
I kind of think their schedule peaked about the same time too.
But still, I would have liked to see them be more competitive, say against Missouri, if nothing else.
Like they had been against Georgia.
Exactly.
We did it on the show. I go back to me. You can draw a line on the schedule between the teams that spread you out and exposed your speed, Oregon, Auburn, Missouri, and then Alabama is more talented, and the teams that you hung with, which is South Carolina and Georgia, which don't spread you out, and really you could line up and kind of trade blows with. I don't think you could ever trade blows with Missouri, Auburn, or Oregon.
And maybe it's not just Butch Jones, but in light of some of the games, like Bob, and we've talked about the Auburn being so conservative, I'm not as 100% sold on the staff. I think you can look at the staff and maybe say, well, going into year 2, there may be some things we need to see to show that they are also capable of competing in the SEC.
Okay. Improvements. Did you? And I think you've answered this already. With you didn't see them. Did you see improvements, or do you say?
And just let me. Not only the schedule, the quarterback losing Worley. That was the timing there. So.
Although I would go back and agree with you on that. That's something else you could throw in there. I think you probably should have gotten Dobbs or Ferguson some snaps earlier in the season in case of that. But you losing him hurt. Should you have seen more improvement than you did? When you consider the schedule and the injuries?
You should have seen more out of your offensive line. I mean, I really go back to that was your make or break. McCullers was going to be the guy the defense was really going to depend on. You didn't really see that on a consistent basis. So, there were some things there that you...
Well, I'll also come in with, you saw Michael Pilardi get a lot better. And a lot of people say, hey, what big deal? Well, it is a big deal.
It was this year.
It was a big deal. And the concerns about the offensive line, I think, are very valid, too. But in the end, is that just these guys were disappointing under 3 different coaches?
Maybe that's why they struggle.
Because they had so many different systems, different coaches.
I was talking to Tim Irwin about that, and he said it's really difficult to improve when you got so many different coaches year to year to year, offensive line or defensive line.
And
there were some individuals that improved. Collectively, it was hard to find a lot of areas, but I thought Rajon Neal improved.
oh yeah.
Right.
You know, he had 1,100 yards.
Jimmy, also along the coaches line, strength coaches too. I mean, I've had people say that was a huge part of what they kept going, because they would work on something and then they would have a change and somebody would come in and say, that was all wrong. We need to do it this way.
Now we're gonna lift tires. No, now we're gonna use the most incredible talent equipment we can find. Yeah, I think that probably did play a role. Plus, they had them; those guys were kind of yo-yoing on the weight side too. We want them big. No, we want them small. No, we want them big. No, we want them small.
Yeah.
I think all that probably played a role. All right, when we come back, we're going to compare Butch Jones' first year to some other coaches: James Franklin, Hugh Freeze, even Nick Saban. How did his numbers stack up? Come on back.